Welcome to this video on the sighing and crying in the seal of God. Today we're going to look at this topic from the perspective of Ellen G. White. We're going to look at some selected references and see what Ellen G. White had to say about the sighing and crying in the last days. So let's take a look at this now and let's get into it. She wrote, "During the past 50 years of my life, I have had precious opportunities to obtain an experience. I have had an experience in the first, second, and third angels' messages." So what did Ellen G. White said? She said she had an experience in the first, second, and third angels' messages. And through this experience and the revelation of God, she had gotten deeper insights and revelation from the Lord on this whole sighing and crying experience in the sealing work that's going on. The angels are represented as flying in the midst of heaven, proclaiming to the world a message of warning and having a direct bearing upon the people living in the last days of this earth's history. No one hears the voice of these angels, for they are a symbol to represent the people of God, who are working in harmony with the universe of heaven. Men and women, enlightened by the Spirit of God and sanctified through the truth, proclaim the three messages in their order. So the three angels' messages represent you and I, men and women, sharing the truth, sharing the gospel with others, working in harmony with God. And so if there's a group working in harmony with God, there is a group of people who are not working in harmony with God. And so let's continue. "The leaven of godliness has not entirely lost its power," she writes. "At the time when the danger and depression of the church are greatest, the little company who are standing in the light will be sighing and crying for the abominations that are done in the land. But more especially will their prayers arise in behalf of the church, because its members are doing after the manner of the world. The earnest prayers of this faithful few will not be in vain. When the Lord comes forth as an avenger, he will also come as a protector of all those who have preserved the faith in its purity and kept themselves unspotted from the world. It is at this time that God has promised to avenge his own elect, which cry day and night on him, though he bear long with them." So notice, first of all, there's a little company. And this little company, they're sighing and crying for the abominations done in the world and in the church. They're very grieved at the sin being practiced and cherished. And as they're grieved, they're praying. They're praying not only for themselves, but they're praying for the church. So they're loving people. This little company are loving people, and they're so invested in the church and so invested in the people that they're praying for them. Don't miss that. Their prayers are rising in behalf of the church because the people are doing after the manner of the world. So their crying and sighing is encouraged, or it arises, I should say, out of this worldliness that has crept in amongst the people. And so they're crying and sighing. They're praying earnestly for their conversion. "These sighing, crying ones have been holding forth the words of life. They had reproved, counseled, and entreated." So notice what they're doing. They've been reproving, counseling, and entreating. So these individuals, although they're sighing, they're upset about what's going on, they are doing something about it. They're holding forth the words of life. They're giving the three angels' messages. They're preaching from the word. They're teaching from the word. They're trying to get people to change. They had reproved. See, their ministry was about reproof, counseling, and entreating. So trying to gain decision. "Some who had been dishonoring God repented and humbled their hearts before him. But the glory of the Lord had departed from Israel, though many still continued the forms of religion. His power and presence were lacking." So there was a life-changing message, and it did change. "In the time when his wrath shall go forth in judgments, these humble, devoted followers of Christ will be distinguished from the rest of the world by their soul anguish, which is expressed in lamentation and weeping, reproofs and warnings." So they are so grieved at the awful condition, they are led then to reprove and to do something about it. You see, although you and I may be stressed out or bothered by the sins cherished and committed amongst the people, we have to do something about it. And that means praying for others. That means reproving, counseling, entreating, trying to win their hearts. That's the whole idea. With love, by the way. "While others try to throw a cloak over the existing evil and excuse the great wickedness everywhere prevalent, those who have a zeal for God's honor and a love for souls will not hold their peace to obtain the favor of any." Notice that. So there's one group calling sin by its right name, another group who are trying to cover the sin, trying to trying to pretend as if it doesn't exist and try to hide it. So there's one group who are faithfully exposing and another group who are trying to cover up. They are powerless. So these grieved and sighing, crying ones, they are powerless to stop the rushing torrent of iniquity, and hence they are filled with grief and alarm. They mourn before God to see religion despised in the very homes of those who have had great light. They lament and afflict their souls because pride, avarice, selfishness, and deception of almost every kind are where? In the church. The Spirit of God, which prompts to reproof, is trampled underfoot, while the servants of Satan triumph. God is dishonored, the truth is made of none effect. Wow. So as there's this great rushing torrent of iniquity, God's people are saying, no, we got to change. We got to revive and reform. And they're doing this in love, by the way, and they're also trying to protect the church too. I have other references, which I don't have time to go through in this video, but maybe I'll do a separate video one day going through how they reprove and correct. Because there's a group of individuals who think they're sighing, crying, reproving, and correcting, but they're actually doing damage to the church. And so Ellen G. White, she writes about this, how to protect the church, yet sigh and cry effectively. So there's a strategy. There's a biblical Spirit of Prophecy strategy to follow in sighing and crying. So if you are grieved, as I am grieved, at oftentimes the disingenuine Christianity or at the lack of conversion seen, we have a proper method to go about it. And that'll be a subject for another time. But God willing, I'll be able to make a video on that too. The Spirit of God prompts to reproof. So the idea is, as much as there are peace and safety messages, as much as there are encouraging messages and enlightening messages and uplifting messages, there's also times where the Spirit of God gives reproof. And we need to be aware of that, and we need to take that seriously. When a pastor or an elder or a deacon has a message of correction to share, we should take it to heart and examine it. Not reject it, but we should be open and be able to talk and discuss these things over and have our minds change. We shouldn't be hard-hearted. None of that. It should be the earnest desire of every heart to keep the church pure. So we have to do that in a right way. If it's your desire to keep the church pure, we must do it in a right way. Remember that there are wheat and tares together, right? And they will be separated at the end. So there are wheat and tares, they grow together till the end. Just like the gospel net, when you cast it out, it catches good fish and some bad fish. The good fish are put away, the bad fish are rejected. So that's the way it goes. So yeah, we are growing together until the harvest. We are swimming together, or we're in the net together until the time of sorting. We are not required to criticize, to condemn, or root out all that we suppose to be weeds, lest we root out also the wheat. The church will not be free from those whose influence is out of harmony with that which should characterize the servants of Christ. The children of God will be stirred in spirit by the doings of these unworthy members, and they will desire to do something to cleanse the church, that its members may be a light to shine in the world. But even under these circumstances, let them be careful to heed the words of the great teacher. Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. There is such a thing as a zeal not according to knowledge. This is what I was talking about earlier. Some have not a zeal according to knowledge. They are doing things, they are preaching things in the public sphere which is doing more damage to the church than helping it. There is a zeal not according to knowledge. Now there is a zeal according to knowledge. And I believe that zeal according to knowledge will not be about condemning and criticizing and publicizing all the problems out into the public sphere for everyone to pick apart and go, haha, look at that church. Ha, look at the Seventh-day Adventist, what a mess it is. No, there are faulty, unworthy members in every church. And God is going to sort it out, and God is going to deal with it in His appointed way. So let's follow the Master's plan. Let's be careful how we treat others and what we do as we are grieved and sighing and crying over the condition. And could all the circumstances be opened which surround these souls, the zealous church members might have their ideas modified and be led to pursue an entirely different course. They would see that a work devolved upon them to seek and to save instead of destroy. You see notice that? And also to manifest long-suffering, gentleness, patience, and love. So those are the fruits of the Spirit. So notice that there are two groups. There's one that is sighing and crying and seeking to preserve and to save, bearing the fruits of the Spirit. Another group are basically have a zeal not according to knowledge, and they're causing damage, and they're manifesting the fruits of the flesh. And in so doing, they are causing problems galore. The people of God are sighing and crying for the abominations done in the land. With tears they warn the wicked of their danger and trampling upon the divine law. And with unutterable sorrow they humble themselves before the Lord on account of their own transgressions. So notice that these people, they're not only sighing and crying for the abominations done outside of themselves, but they're also grieved at their own shortcoming. So it's not point the finger. What it is it's whoa, what I'm seeing around me is shocking and it's hurting and it brings me sorrow. And then you look at yourself and go, whoa, I'm not worthy either. And then you're led to really self-examine, and you're led also to do something about the sin in your life and in others. With tears they warn the wicked of their danger. Man, let me tell you, like, when I started working, well, like, there are times, I had some dark times, and I struggled. And my wife has seen me shed a tear or two. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And guys, I'm just saying, I'm coming at you as a pastor, like, you have no idea what we deal with. There's so much problems. There's some people and some families are in such a mess, and they need so much prayer, and they need so much of your help. Pastors need your prayerful support, and they need you to uphold their hands, and they need you. I need you. So please pray for me. The wicked mock their sorrow, ridicule their solemn appeals, and sneer at what they term their weakness. Notice that? They're almost like narcissistic. They mock the ones who cry for the sin. They ridicule them. They mistreat them and mishandle them. This is happening, notice, in the church. But the anguish and humiliation of God's people is unmistakable evidence that they are regaining the strength and nobility of character lost in consequence of sin. It is because they are drawing nearer to Christ and their eyes are fixed upon his perfect purity that they so clearly discern the exceeding sinfulness of sin. Notice that this heart sorrow, this is actually a sign that God is working transformation, that God is preparing his people to be ready. Isn't that cool? So as much as like I've had my down times, as much as I've had my tears shed, I realize that my pain, my sorrow for sin in my life and in others' lives is showing to me and demonstrating to me that God is working on my heart and changing me. That should be encouraging for all of us. Those who obey the commandments of God are here represented by Christ as the fit subjects of his kingdom. Happy are they that mourn their own unlikeness to Christ, mourn their own sinfulness, and grieve over the sins of their neighbors. These are represented by the prophet of God as the sighing and crying ones, because of the abominations done in the land. So notice that the ones who are being sealed, although they are mourning over their unlikeness and although they're mourning over their own sinfulness, they still find happiness in Jesus Christ. The class who do not feel grieved over their own spiritual declension, nor mourn over the sins of others, will be left without the seal of God. Pause right there. Wow. So if you don't feel grieved over your own spiritual declension, or mourn over the sins of others, what does that text say? No seal of God. None. So that means we got to develop that godly sorrow for sin. Not in just looking around ourselves. No. As much as we may point the finger needs to be pointed at us too. It needs to go both ways. We need that sorrow for sin regained. Here we see that the church, the Lord's sanctuary, was the first to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. The ancient men, those to whom God had given great light and who had stood as guardians of the spiritual interests of the people, had betrayed their trust. Oh my. So we see that those who were of the priestly class, the pastoral class, they had really failed. They had taken the position that we need not look for miracles and the marked manifestation of God's powers in former days. Times have changed. These words strengthen their unbelief, and they say, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. He is too merciful to visit his people in judgment. Thus a peace and safety is the cry of men who will never again lift up their voice like a trumpet. These dumb dogs that would not bark are the ones who feel the just vengeance of an offended God. Notice here she doesn't say all. She doesn't say all the ancient men. She says the ancient men. She goes, there would be dumb dogs. She doesn't say all of them are dumb dogs. She doesn't say all of them are crying peace and safety. All right, I just wanted to let you know that. Don't demonize the entire pastorhood, so to speak, just because Ellen G. White had mentioned this. These persons come to feel secure. Okay, the abominations for which the faithful ones were sighing and crying were all that could be discerned by finite eyes. But by far the worst sins, those which provoke the jealousy of the pure and holy God, were unrevealed. The great searcher of hearts knows every sin committed in secret by the workers of iniquity. So these workers of iniquity come to feel secure in their deceptions, and because of his long suffering say, the Lord sees not, then act as though he had forsaken the earth. But he will detect their hypocrisy and will open before others those sins which they were so careful to hide. You see, all is going to be revealed. We can try to hide our sins, we can try to pretend as if we're perfect, but in reality, if we don't confess and forsake, all is going to be revealed. Those who have been regarded as worthy and righteous prove to be ringleaders in apostasy and examples in indifference and in abuse of God's mercies. Wow. So there are going to be popular ministers. There's going to be popular ministers, popular preachers, popular pastors, popular elders, popular deacons, popular you name it, who people are going to think, oh, they must be going to heaven. But it's going to be a shocker when they don't make it. By the way, I'm not saying all. Our own course of action will determine whether we shall receive the seal of the living God or be cut down by the destroying weapons. So where's the responsibility? Where does it lie? It lies on us. Not all who profess to keep the Sabbath will be sealed. So the church, everyone who's in the church books will not be saved. There's going to be a remnant. There are many even among those who teach the truth to others who will not receive the seal of God in their foreheads. They had the light of truth, they knew their master's will, they understood every point of our faith, but they had not corresponding works. You see that? You and I, we may have a head knowledge of truth, but the head knowledge is not going to save you. It's actually, you need that faith, you need that knowledge of God too, and you need that works. And the works that are motivated by love. Faith that works by love. This is what we need. And it's not so much a head knowledge. Yeah, that's important, but we need both. We need the knowledge and the actions. We need them both. Not one of us will ever receive the seal of God while our characters have one spot or stain upon them. It is left with us to remedy the defects in our characters, to cleanse the soul temple of every defilement. Then the latter rain will fall upon us as the early rain fell upon the disciples on the day of Pentecost. You see, we got to be vessels prepared for the Lord. If a vessel is filled with the world, if a vessel is filled with self in the world, can it be filled with the Spirit of God? If you fill up a vessel full of water, can you add more water to it? No. The vessel has to be emptied. So you and I, we have to be emptied of self. We have to be on fire for the Lord so that He can fill us up. Our characters have to be prepared. Our characters have to be modeled after the similitude, the pattern of Christ. Not one thread of self can be weaved into this pattern. You and I, we have a huge work to do, and we can only do it through the power and grace of Jesus Christ. By relying on Him and working by faith, can we have the transformation. I'm not preaching legalism. What I'm preaching you is Bible. Faith without works dead, being alone, is worthless. We need faith that works by love. During the past 50 years of my life, I've had precious opportunities to obtain an experience. I've had an experience in the first, second, and third angels' messages. I've circled back to this text because we need that experience in the first, second, and third angels' messages. And as we have that experience, our lives will change. Sometimes I think to myself, when I get involved with families, I start to think to myself, have you even accepted the first angel's message? Has this family even accepted the first angel's message? You know, which talks about fearing God and giving glory to Him. I really wonder sometimes, or maybe they just never understood it right. And so I hope and I pray that you and I can be agents for, getting into the Word and sharing the Word in a proper way, and sighing and crying in the right way, and having a zeal according to knowledge. So this is my prayer, and this is my hope for all of us here today. And if you'd like to see any other topic covered, if there's something that interests you, please let me know down in the comments below. By the way, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and let me know what you think. May God bless you and keep you until we study again.